I can no longer count on one hand the number of times that my electric razor has died mid-shave. Hey everyone, Kyle from Cosplays from Trash. I'll get the annoying reminder of subscribe, please, out of the way. Do me a solid, fam. Ugh, that sounded gross to say out loud. Huge shout out to all my patrons this month. I'm actually just really excited to do the Energizer Bunny photo shoot for Trash After Dark. I'm like weirdly excited about it. Don't read into that. Or do. I've changed my setup and I've decided, why don't I just film in my costume room? Like my spare bedroom. Like either put a bed in here for the 0 people that visit me or put all my costumes in here. And it's much more of an interesting background than the blobs downstairs. I don't know why the laundry room wasn't storage to begin with. Since I never really did a proper how I made video for these 3 costumes, Black Widow, Diddy Kong, and Misa Misa, I'm gonna do a run through of those and actually talk a little bit more how I made them instead of just the whole stuff and things. Of the 3 of these, definitely Black Widow has been my most popular, and I've worn it to the most number of cons. Originally, there was going to be a red wig for this. My wig styling is just bad, put it nicely. We'll just talk about the costume part. We'll kind of ignore the, wig photos. Sometimes I do go out of my way to make things harder for myself. With Black Widow, I was like, let's just tailor some clothes. With the shirt, the pants, and the boots, all 3 of those are just tailored items that I already had. Took in the jacket a little bit, added pockets on the pants. Since this is a costume I wanted to travel in, I wanted to make sure that it didn't kill me when I'm walking around in it. You can only wear uncomfortable costumes for so long before you just scream at yourself. Definitely the coolest part of the costume were the bites that go little gun thingy. The bites really did not want to cooperate a lot of the time. The bites really did not want to cooperate a lot of the time, fill it out more, but this has a tendency to completely just flop everywhere if you aren't really paying attention. Just on the wrist, it does look pretty good, but there are some minor adjustments that you have to make. Secret to cosplayers, there are some costumes that literally take constant repairs, no matter how delicate you are with it. Those are a combination of a shelf, rings for shower curtains. The cool thing about these is they're extremely recognizable no matter how good or bad you end up doing them. So if you ever wanted to do Black Widow, you could probably spray paint like Nerf darts and then literally glue it to something around your wrist and it'd be pretty recognizable as the Widow bites. Making a harness is not the easiest thing to do because you need to tailor it to your body, and depending on how much wiggle room you have or how much adjustment you want to do. This was for a stage curtain. This was the nylon that actually held the curtain to the curtain rod, I guess. It was like 30 feet wide. Ended up using all the nylon I did for the harnesses. I was quickly running out of material the entire time while doing this. There was a lot of measuring, putting on my body, partially sewing, taking off, etc., etc. But to be honest, both the Widow bites and the harness were kind of like that. Using scrap materials, I really didn't know how much I was going to have left over, so I was constantly trying to figure out how to cut it, put it on me, trial and error, and praying that I didn't need any more. The belt was definitely my favorite part to do because that's the part that makes the costume really recognizable. Thinking about all the things that went into this belt, it literally is just an amalgamation of stuff. I don't think I've shown the backside of this very well. On the front, it looks pretty good. Ta-da! But on the backside, you can see that this is literally held in place by brads. I did hand stitch some of this and I hated it, but this is part of a book cover, like a notebook cover, one of the crappy ones you get for free at conferences. And then this is just a plastic gold ring around it. Literally, oh, it's trash. But hey, it worked out. I mean, the belt is probably the best example of like just trash because, I mean, these are held in by brads. You know, things you stick through paper, not like your friend Brad. There's not like 100 little Brads there just going, hey, I'm Brad, I'm holding this up. That was dumb. Could have been dumber. Brads are actually super helpful. I don't know that many Brads, but they're probably helpful in real. I meant these Brads. The lesson here is there's ever a costume that you really want to do that may seem relatively intimidating. Feel free to buy or modify or tailor or just maybe glue something on for most of the costume. And similar to my Nightwing costume, except that was a skin suit that I bought, the base of the costume is mostly just clothes. It's the props that I really care about that kind of like sell the costume, the part you want to invest time in. Using that as a segue to go into the next costume for Diddy Kong, it's kind of the same thing. You could easily make a shirt from scratch, or make pants from scratch, or make a hat from scratch. You know what's a lot easier? Getting a red shirt and tailoring it. Yeah, like I would like to say that I make everything from scratch. Way easier just to cut the shirt and then glue on some yellow that I cut out with my Cricut. And then the hat, Cricut out the Nintendo letters. And I did actually the hat was a different hat, and I did have to, it's not that hat, don't worry about it. I took out a lot of embroidery by hand, and I'm like, why did I do that? Why didn't I just make a patch to put over it? I probably would make this into something you could iron on. Right now, this is obviously a little flimsy on the hat. Now that I do actually have a hat press, I could make this a little bit better. Look at those terrible seam lines. It's really okay that some of this doesn't look that great when you get up close or kind of look at the inside, because this is not for a competition. Similar to the Black Widow costume, the base of everything is just clothes with some adornments on it, and then the prop really sold it. The peanut blasters, I make a lot of things out of protein powder tubs because I tend to have those a lot, and those are the perfect size for Diddy's blasters. Making them look wooden, this was this weird paper stuff that I put over some placemats to kind of give it a wooden vibe. This is supposed to be like a hollowed out tree. The anatomy of these doesn't really make any sense. I don't know how you put a peanut and fire it in there. Keep in mind the main goal is for it to look like bark or a hollowed out tree. This is actually the same stuff that'll be in the Misa Misa costume. It's this papery. I've talked about something called the 5-foot rule before. If you looked up closely, you could tell that this is paper and not actually wood. But considering that paper is kind of basically wood anyway, the veneer on this gives the illusion of it being some sort of wood. But things like the handle don't really matter what they look like as long as it's grippable. Do you have two guns that kind of look wooden? Congrats, you did it. You made Diddy Kong. This is just an amalgamation of foam. I overcomplicated this a lot. Honestly, I could have just used wood itself to make the handle so it can be sturdier. I don't remember what this is. It's probably part of a file folder or something. I could probably improve this a little bit and actually somehow put a trigger in there. It's a little hard to see on the inside, but that's the part that did not get covered. I think it's several layers of a yoga mat that is getting taped together. If you already have something that's pretty similar, you wouldn't have to make anything from scratch, but I'm all about, again, taking as many shortcuts as possible, because sometimes you just want to do the costume and you don't want to have to make something from scratch. Of the three costumes, definitely Misa Misa is my favorite. It's a really dumb joke combining the Little Caesars mascot with Misa Misa from Death Note. I laugh to myself every time I say it. I think this is incredibly clever. I laugh at my own jokes. And so in terms of just using stuff that you have, the skirt and the tunic, just all of it were sweatpants that I ended up inverting. They just turned inside out. They were actually mine, so it's not as gross that I'm wearing inside-out sweatpants, because that would probably be pretty gross if it was someone else's. Well, someone else I didn't know. I guess someone else I did know would still kind of be gross. This actually is two different pieces. One part is the skirt, and the other is the tunic that goes over it. The leggings, absolutely terrible idea. This is a torn-up shoe and some HDMI cables that I had to puncture holes in. Do not recommend this. It was not very... I did not like it. It was not comfortable. These are really terrible. I had to adjust them constantly all day to make sure they didn't fall down. Then also they weren't good downstairs. It looked good. Instead of throwing away shoes, I typically keep them so I can turn them into cosplay things. This HDMI cable, extremely painful. If you had something that was not an HDMI cable, I definitely recommend that. This can get away with things in a pinch, but emphasis on pinch. The crown was a mouse pad that I just cut a billion leaves out of and just used floral wire to comb it together. Again, as long as the end product looks good, it doesn't really matter what something's made out of. I really like the crown. Makes me feel pretty. Well, that's a bad... It looks really terrible with a hat on, but hold on, I guess I can just take it off. Ta-da! Laurels! I always say that execution is more important than pretty much anything else, so if something was executed with intentionality and the outcome was good/good enough, then the costume's good. I'm sure I would have probably rather had a better crown or maybe better leggings that didn't cut off all the circulation in my legs and kind of give me blisters, but good enough for photos. My favorite part of the costume is the Little Caesars Death Note staff. There's a lot of kayak paddle that's going on here, and I do need to repaint this because some of the glue came off. You just take a lot of long, pointy things and then glue them together, and it doesn't matter how crappy they look underneath because you're going to cover it with a veneer on top. That's an Easter egg, if anyone cares. I care. And the top is a kayak paddle that I used my aviation snits to muscle off. The notebook is something I made from scratch. I didn't write the Death Note, I did. My handwriting and precision when cutting is that of a, I don't know, blind baby without hands or ears. I feel like I could have just said a baby. No infant's going to be cutting out letters. But I will always use my Cricut when I can for intricate things like this. Partially, it saves time, but then also partially, it just looks better if someone else does it sometimes. I mean, I guess the rest of this is made from scratch. But considering how much I hated those older videos, I'm glad that I could actually talk about them in a way that was more comfortable. This is it. We've reached the end of all the old videos I'm revamping. I just wanted to do this short 2-part series because I have wanted to do it for a while, but I'm boring, but I don't see any of these characters cosplayed very much. I guess I do see a lot of Black Widows, but it is mostly, I don't see a lot of gender-bent Black Widows. If you've ever cosplayed as any 3 of these characters, please let me know. I want to know that I'm not alone there. But thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far and you're not subscribed, here's me bullying you again. Sport. See you next time. I have no idea why, but there's another belt in here. I'm proud to be an American. I can no longer count. I forgot where everything is in this room. All around me are familiar. This coffee tastes like dirt. Huge shout out to all my patrons that put up with me. Is it a spider? And yet I keep drinking. Or whatever. Sometimes I go out of my... I have everything labeled, but not labeled very well. One time for a murder mystery party, I was Italian and I was the murderer, and I panicked when I had to come up with my name, and I wrote down Cacio e Pepe.